What if I told you that the most terrifying villains in Western cinema weren't acting? What if I told you that the man who played Hollywood's most sadistic stockade bully hunted German U-boats across the Atlantic for 10 years? That the actor with the most menacing face in Westerns got that face from a pencil driven through his eyeball at a Boy Scout meeting? That one villain was a real professional boxer with 12 knockouts before he ever stepped in front of a camera? And what if I told you that the scariest Western villain of them all was a 220-pound decathlete who broke the NFL color barrier a full year before Jackie Robinson broke baseballs? These are the 10 Western villains whose real lives were more dangerous, more violent, and more shocking than anything Hollywood ever put on screen. And by the time we get to number 1, you're going to realize that the most dangerous man on any Western set was never reading from a script. These are the 10 Western villains more dangerous than the heroes they fought on screen. Number 1, Ernest Borgnine, the Navy's toughest sailor, with Hollywood's wildest love life. Before he played Sergeant Fatso Judson in From Here to Eternity, the sadistic stockade guard who beats Frank Sinatra's character to death, Ernest Borgnine was hunting German submarines in the North Atlantic. Born January 24th, 1917 in Hamden, Connecticut, to Italian immigrants, young Hermes saw a Navy recruiting poster while selling vegetables off a truck. He enlisted in October 1935 at age 18, and he didn't serve for 2 years. He served for almost 10. His first tour put him aboard the USS Lamberton after Pearl Harbor, but he re-enlisted in January 1942 and was assigned to the USS Sylph, a converted patrol yacht, conducting anti-submarine warfare during 1942, the deadliest year for American shipping in the Atlantic. While U-boats were sinking merchant vessels up and down the eastern seaboard, Borgnine was out there hunting them. He achieved the rank of gunner's mate first class. But the real danger in Borgnine's life? His marriages. 5 of them. The third one, to Broadway legend Ethel Merman in 1964, lasted exactly 32 days. Tim Conway said it best: you put 2 bombs in a room, something's going to explode. Merman's autobiography devoted an entire chapter to the marriage. The chapter was a single blank page. While filming Vera Cruz in Mexico, Borgnine and Charles Bronson rode into a Mexican town in full bandit costume. Bandoliers, pistols, the works, to buy cigarettes. Mexican federal police mistook them for real bandits and held them at gunpoint until someone could prove they were actors. He was still voicing Mermaid Man on SpongeBob SquarePants days before he died at age 95. The Navy's toughest sailor outlasted them all. Number 2, Jack Elam, the Boy Scout who got a pencil through his eye. If you watched any Western between 1950 and 1980, you know that face, that wandering left eye, the most unsettling stare in cinema history. What you don't know is how he got it. November 13th, 1920. William Scott Elam was born in Miami, Arizona, a tiny copper mining town. His mother, Alice, died when he was 3. He was shuffled between families and worked cotton fields as a child. Then, at age 11, during a Boy Scout initiation night in 1931, another boy stabbed him in the left eye with a pencil. There was no doctor present. Surgeons eventually removed the damaged lens, leaving him permanently blind in that eye. Over the next 2 decades, the damaged muscles caused it to drift further and further, creating that signature look that terrified audiences for 40 years. But here's where the story gets worse. After lying about his age at 16 to get a job as an auditor for Standard Oil, then somehow passing a Navy physical during World War II, despite being blind in one eye, Elam became an accountant. The close detail work strained his one good eye until it kept shutting down. Multiple operations failed. His doctor finally told him he couldn't open it anymore. Facing total blindness, Elam had to abandon his entire career. He turned to acting because he had literally no other option, cutting a deal to arrange financing for a director friend in exchange for villain roles in 3 Western scripts. He appeared in over 130 Westerns. His most iconic moment? Standing perfectly still with a fly crawling across his face in the opening of Once Upon a Time in the West. Director Sergio Leone refused to call cut. Elam refused to flinch. That's not acting. That's a man who'd already lost an eye at a Boy Scout meeting and wasn't afraid of a damn thing. Number 3. Charles Bronson, the coal miner, who wore his sister's dress to school. If you watched our Bronson video, you already know this story, but it belongs on this list too. Charles Dennis Bukinski, the 11th of 15 children, a Lithuanian coal mining family in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania. He went to school in his sister's dress because there was nothing else to wear. At 10 years old, he was crawling through mine shafts hundreds of feet underground for $1 per ton. His father died from the coal dust. In World War II, he flew 25 combat missions over Japan as a B-29 aerial gunner, earned a Purple Heart, changed his name to Bronson during McCarthyism because a Russian-sounding surname could end a career overnight. He became the highest-paid actor in the world. Not America, the world. Bigger than Eastwood, bigger than McQueen. The man who went to school in a dress became the most dangerous face on the biggest screen on Earth. Number 4. Bruce Dern, American royalty, who killed John Wayne and paid for it with death threats for 50 years. Bruce McLeish. Dern was born June 4th, 1936, in Chicago, into one of the most powerful families in America. His grandfather, George Dern, served as governor of Utah and Secretary of War. His great-uncle Archibald McLeish won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. His godfather was Adlai Stevenson, 2-time presidential nominee. Eleanor Roosevelt reportedly babysat him as a child. He walked away from all of it, dropped out of the University of Pennsylvania, became a competitive distance runner who logged between 2,500 and 4,000 miles per year between ages 28 and 70, competed in 50-mile ultra-marathons. That obsessive physical discipline gave him the wiry, intense look that made him Hollywood's most convincing villain. Then, in 1972, he did the unthinkable. In The Cowboys, he shot John Wayne in the back. It was the first and only time Wayne's character died on screen by a villain's hand. Before filming, Wayne told him straight, "When this picture comes out, audiences are going to hate you for this." Dern's response? Maybe. But at Berkeley, I'm a goddamn hero, Wayne laughed. Then told his crew, "That's why this man is in my film." The consequences were real. Dern received death threats and hate mail for decades. His daughter, Laura Dern, recalled that friends' parents canceled play dates because of the film. Over 50 years later, he still receives hate mail. But the real tragedy in Dern's life had nothing to do with John Wayne. In May 1962, his 18-month-old daughter, Diane Elizabeth, drowned in a swimming pool. It destroyed his first marriage to actress Diane Ladd. Years later, their second daughter, Laura, was born. She would grow up to win her own Oscar. In 2010, Bruce, Diane Ladd, and Laura Dern received adjoining stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the only family in history to do so. The man who killed John Wayne built a dynasty instead. Number 5. Robert Ryan, the boxing champion who worked as bodyguard to a gangster. Robert Bushnell. Ryan stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, with a face that one critic described as cruelly lined and simmering with intensity. He was the most genuinely physically dangerous man in Golden Age Hollywood. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. Born November 11th, 1909, in Chicago. At Dartmouth College, he was the heavyweight boxing champion for all 4 years, posting a record of 5 wins and 0 losses with 3 knockouts. He also lettered in football and track. But here's the part that never made the studio biography. Before Hollywood, Ryan's jobs included ranch hand, seaman, sewer builder, and, according to his own RKO file, bodyguard and chauffeur to a mobster. That's not speculation. That's what the studio recorded. After Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Marines and became a drill instructor at Camp Pendleton. Think about that. The heavyweight boxing champion of Dartmouth was now teaching young Marines how to fight on the set of The Wild Bunch. In 1969, director Sam Peckinpah pushed Ryan too far, making him sit in full costume and makeup for 10 days without filming a single scene. Ryan stood up and told Peckinpah he was going to punch him in the face. A crew member quietly reminded the director of Ryan's boxing credentials. Peckinpah backed down. one of the only documented instances of anyone intimidating Sam Peckinpah. The great paradox? Despite playing cinema's most hateful bigots and violent men, Ryan was a committed pacifist. His wife Jessica was a Quaker. He co-founded the Hollywood chapter of the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy. He joined the committee to defend Martin Luther King Jr. He lived at the Dakota on 72nd Street, the same apartment later leased to John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Jessica died of cancer in May 1972. Ryan, who had discovered his own inoperable cancer 2 years earlier, said, "Something very big is missing, and I don't know what to put in its place." He died 14 months after her. His final performance in The Iceman Cometh, alongside Lee Marvin, was completed while he was dying. Number 6. Ben Johnson, the only man in history to win both a World Rodeo Championship and an Academy Award. Read that headline again, because it's still true. Francis Benjamin Johnson Jr. was born June 13, 1918, in Foraker, Oklahoma, on the Osage Indian Reservation, of Irish and Cherokee heritage. His father was a 3-time world champion rodeo cowboy. Ben Jr. grew up roping cattle before he could read. He was making $40 a month as a ranch hand when Howard Hughes hired him to haul a string of horses to California for a film called The Outlaw. When they offered him $175 a week, he said, "After that, you couldn't have driven me back to Oklahoma with a club." On the set of John Ford's Fort Apache in 1948, a wagon pulled by horses stampeded with 3 men aboard. Ben Johnson happened to be sitting on a horse nearby. He rode down the runaway wagon and saved all 3 men's lives. Ford was so impressed, he presented Johnson with a 7-year acting contract. When Johnson reached the 5th line, $5,000 a week, he stopped reading, grabbed a pen, signed it, and handed it back. In 1953, he walked away from well-paid film work to compete on the professional rodeo circuit. He won the RCA World Champion Team Roper title. His own words, "I've won a rodeo world championship, and I'm prouder of that than anything else I've ever done." Then came The Last Picture Show. Johnson initially turned it down because the script had too much profanity. Director Peter Bogdanovich appealed to John Ford, who called Johnson at dawn. "Ben, would you do me a favor?" Johnson said yes, sir, without asking what the favor was. He rewrote his own part, removing the offensive language, then won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. His acceptance speech? This couldn't have happened to a nicer feller. When asked what he'd do with the trophy, he said, "I'm going to use it as a doorstop in my ranch house." The only man alive who could say he'd won both a World Rodeo Championship and an Academy Award. And he used the Oscar as a doorstop. Number 7, Jack Palance, the Ukrainian coal miner who did one-armed push-ups at the Oscars. Another name you know from our channel, Volodymyr Polanyuk, born February 18, 1919, in Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania, to Ukrainian immigrant coal miners. Father died of black lung disease. Before Hollywood, he was professional boxer Jack Brazzo, 15 victories, 12 by knockout. Then he enlisted, trained as a B-24 Liberator pilot, and survived a catastrophic crash during a training flight over Arizona. He received a Purple Heart. Now, the widely repeated story says his iconic face was the result of plastic surgery after the crash, but Palance himself denied it. "Studio press agents make up anything they want," he said. "One flack created the legend that my face had to be put back together by plastic surgery. If it is a bionic face, why didn't they do a better job of it?" The crash happened. The extent of facial surgery is disputed. What's not disputed is that face. In Shane, he played the hired gunfighter, Jack Wilson. And audiences were so terrified that some reportedly left the theater during his scenes. Then, on March 30th, 1992, at age 73, he accepted the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for City Slickers and dropped to the floor to do one-armed push-ups. Host Billy Crystal's response? Jack Palance just bungee jumped off the Hollywood sign. A coal miner, a boxer with 12 knockouts, a crash survivor. And at 73, he could still do things on live television that men half his age couldn't do in a gym. Number 8, Warren Oates, Hollywood's ultimate hellraiser who died because he was too tough to see a doctor. Film historian David Thompson wrote of Warren Oates, "You can smell whiskey and sweat on him. He has a face like prison bread, with eyes that have known too much solitary confinement." Born July 5, 1928, in Depoy, Kentucky, Marine Corps veteran, 1946 to 1948. Violence ran in his blood. A Revolutionary-era ancestor had fled to Kentucky after killing a man. Oates became Sam Peckinpah's most trusted actor and most dangerous friend. They met on The Rifleman in the late 1950s and spent the next 2 decades hunting together, drinking together, and destroying each other. On film sets, Oates's Winnebago RV was legendary. Biographer Susan Compo cataloged what he served guests from what the crew called the Roach Coach. Magic mushrooms on toast, crushed up dexedrine flambéed in brandy, and spoonfuls of vanilla-flavored LSD. His friends described him as kind and caring, but also sometimes as mean as a blue-eyed devil. For Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia in 1974, a character reportedly based on Peckinpah himself, Oates wore Peckinpah's actual sunglasses throughout the entire film. Multiple reviewers now consider it one of the great underrated performances of the decade. Warren Oates had been experiencing chest pains for 6 months. He refused to see a doctor. He'd had the flu for about 2 weeks. On April 3rd, 1982, at age 53, he took an afternoon nap and never woke up. The autopsy revealed chronic emphysema from years of chain smoking. His ashes were scattered at his ranch in Montana. Richard Linklater said it best, "Because there was once a god who walked the earth named Warren Oates." Peckinpah died just 2 years later. He was 59. Number 9. Slim Pickens, the rodeo cowboy with 17 broken bones on one side of his body. His real name was Louis Burton Lindley Jr., born June 29, 1919, in Kingsburg, California. At about age 15, he snuck out to ride in a rodeo against his father's wishes. He needed a fake name. An old cowboy said, "Why don't you call yourself Slim Pickens? Because that's what your prize money will be." The manager misspelled it Pickens on the entry form. The kid won $400 that afternoon. His future as a dairy farmer was officially over. For nearly 20 years, Slim Pickens rode the professional rodeo circuit as a bronc buster, Brahma bull rider, wild horse racer, and eventually North America's most famous rodeo clown. Here is his verified injury list: crushed chest, 2 skull fractures, 2 broken wrists, broken elbow, broken collarbone, broken left hand, feet broken 5 times, back broken twice, and more broken ribs than he could remember. His own words: "I had one side of my body x-rayed after I got thrown one time, and it showed I had 17 broken bones on that side alone." When asked why he switched to Hollywood, he said, "I was paying rodeo entry fees to get my neck broke, and stuntmen were getting paid to fall off horses." He was one of the only actors in Hollywood who could actually drive a 6-horse stagecoach team. He was also an accomplished pilot. He used his own hats, boots, horses, and mules in productions. Then, Stanley Kubrick cast him as Major King Kong in Dr. Strangelove. The bomb-riding scene, Slim waving his cowboy hat while riding a nuclear weapon to the ground, took over 100 takes. When later offered a role in The Shining, Pickens told Kubrick he'd only do it if the director shot his scenes in fewer than 100 takes. He ultimately declined. He was even drafted into the Army during World War II. When asked his profession, he wrote rodeo. The recruiter misread it as radio, and Slim Pickens spent his entire enlistment working at a radio station in the Midwest. A perfectly absurd ending to a perfectly absurd life. A brain tumor took him on December 8, 1983. He was 64. The man with 17 broken bones on one side of his body was finally done getting thrown. Number 10. Woody Strode, the 220-pound decathlete who broke the NFL color barrier and had the Nazis shut down his art exhibit. Woodrow Wilson Woolwine Strode, born July 25, 1914, in Los Angeles, of African-American, Cherokee, and Creek heritage. 6 feet 4 inches tall, 220 pounds of solid muscle. He performed 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, and 1,000 knee bends daily. One writer described him as simply one of the most ridiculously perfect human specimens to ever walk the earth. At UCLA, he played football alongside Jackie Robinson in a backfield called the Gold Dust Gang, the most integrated college team in America. He was a world-class decathlete who could throw the shot, put over 50 feet, and high jump 6 feet 5. He could beat Glenn Morris, the 1936 Olympic gold medalist, in every event except sprints. In 1936, artist Hubert Stowitz painted Strode's nude portrait for an athletic art exhibition at the Berlin Olympics. The Nazis shut down the exhibit because it included black and Jewish athletes. Adolf Hitler reportedly saw photographs and sent filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl to America to film Strode. In 1946, Strode and Kenny Washington became the first black players in the modern NFL with the Los Angeles Rams. A full year before Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier. Think about that. Everybody knows Jackie Robinson. Almost nobody knows Woody Strode. He also had a career in professional wrestling, on Fighting Gorgeous George and billed as Pacific Coast Heavyweight Champion. On the set of The Professionals in 1966, Burt Lancaster, widely considered one of the strongest men in Hollywood, repeatedly challenged Strode to strength contests and was reportedly despondent to be bested by him every single time. John Ford cast him as the lead in Sergeant Rutledge in 1960. The studios wanted Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte. Ford's response: "They're not tough enough to do what I want Sergeant Rutledge to be." Strode called it his finest hour. "It had dignity," he said. John Ford put classic words in my mouth. "You never seen a Negro come off a mountain like John Wayne before." During Ford's final illness with cancer, Strode spent 4 months sleeping on Ford's floor as his caregiver. He was present when Ford died. The man who was too tough for Poitier's role was gentle enough to nurse a dying legend through his final days. He moved to Europe in the late 1960s to escape Hollywood racism and find better roles. And here's a detail that most people don't know. Sheriff Woody in Toy Story, named after him. Woody Strode died of lung cancer on New Year's Eve, 1994. He was 80 years old, buried at Riverside National Cemetery with military honors. The man who broke the NFL color barrier. The man who had the Nazis shut down his art exhibit. The man who outmuscled Burt Lancaster and nursed John Ford to his death. The most dangerous Western villain of them all wasn't a villain at all. So let's take all of this in. A Navy gunner who hunted U-boats for 10 years and was held at gunpoint by Mexican police for buying cigarettes. Chetin. A boy who lost an eye to a pencil at a Boy Scout meeting and acted in 130 westerns while blind on one side. A coal miner's son who went to school in a dress and became the highest paid actor on earth. An heir to American royalty who killed John Wayne and received death threats for 50 years. A Dartmouth boxing champion who worked as bodyguard to a mobster. The only man alive who won both a world rodeo championship and an Oscar and used the trophy as a doorstop. A coal miner turned boxer with 12 knockouts who did one-armed push-ups at age 73. A hellraiser who served LSD spoonfuls from a Winnebago and died because he was too tough to see a doctor. A rodeo cowboy with 17 broken bones on one side of his body, and a 220-pound decathlete who broke the NFL color barrier before Jackie Robinson. These weren't actors playing dangerous men. These were dangerous men who happened to act. If these stories surprised you, if even one of these men made you say, "I had no idea," hit that subscribe button. We cover the legends of classic Hollywood every single week on this channel. The stories your history teachers never told you, and your favorite movie stars never talked about. And you know what connects every single man on this list? Not one of them started out wanting to be an actor. They were sailors, soldiers, boxers, coal miners, cowboys, and athletes. Hollywood didn't create these men. These men happened to Hollywood. And Hollywood was never the same. Which villain surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments.